Welcome to the Psych Gym. Let's hit the weights. Hey, y'all. Welcome back. Welcome back to me, mostly. This whole adding this to my plate and remembering to actually do it has been a process. I just am very timeline. I think I've shared that a few times. I am definitely ADHD functional. I've learned how to create my life around how my brain operates for the most part. But also, when I add new things, having to shift that stuff around sometimes takes me a hot minute. And that's what's been happening now. I love doing this. I love the idea of this. I'm very excited about this podcast and bringing information in a different way to people. But that means I have to make sure that I do it. And so obviously that's been a bit of a challenge. But here we are. We're here today, and I am going to record a couple at a time so that I can hopefully get ahead of this thing and stay on track and bring you some new content every week. For those of you that are listening already, thank you so much. If you are new, thank you so much. Make sure that you subscribe, check out some of the other topics. If you have any topics you'd like me to cover, then just send me a message because I am always looking for input. I thrive on input constantly, so I welcome all of that. Today we're going to talk about consumerism. It's been on my mind for a long time. We're going through some things here in the US that have to do with consumerism, and it just seems like an important topic to talk about. Something I don't think we are very educated on, and for good reason. If we were very educated on the effects of consumerism, we wouldn't be as big on consumption as we are. So I know it sounds very like conspiracy theorists like to think that way. However, I mean, is it not true? People who produce things need us to buy them. So, of course, they're going to encourage us to buy them. Well, let's just get started into it. What's the definition of consumerism? What is consumerism? It is the constant cycle of buying more things and services to achieve happiness or success or some other kind of benefit that we've been taught. Why does it matter to talk about? Why am I talking about it? Why is Vanessa doing a podcast about this? Because I sit down with people and have gone through this myself of the effect of consumerism on your mental health. The environment's important. Our society as a whole is important, but we are all individuals. And so the change coming at our individual level is always going to be the most important and first step. So I'm just cutting right to that chase. If we all are kind of changing, then society at large changes, and that changes the environment, right? So it's all tied together, but I don't need to talk about the environmental part as hard, and I don't really need to talk about society at large as much. When you think about consumerism and how you are a consumer, sometimes it's tricky, and sometimes it's okay. I'm not putting this podcast out here to promote minimalism because I'm not a minimalist. I appreciate certain things. There are things that have been created that I'm very excited about their existence and I'm willing to pay for them. I recently bought a new KitchenAid mixer. My old one is very old. I mean, I don't know how old it is. It's very, very old. It's so old it doesn't have a 3-prong plug, if that tells you anything. And it started to give me trouble. And I thought, well, I could fix it, because that's part of that anti-consumer message that I have in my head of if you don't have to, don't do it. And it feels, pretty fine most of the time. But in this instance, it was like, just get the new one. You're going to use it a lot. You use that thing all the time. It's helpful for you. Just do that. But that becomes an intentional purchase, right? And it wasn't about success. I didn't feel like, oh, I have to upgrade because I don't like the color. There was the whole, it was purpose driven. However, those of you who know me personally know how much I complain about my vehicle payment. I traded in a completely paid off minivan for my truck, and I'm not saying that I regret it because that truck has done me a solid. It started off bumpy. We had a not great first year, but since then has done me a solid. It's been fantastic having this truck. However, the amount I pay for it pisses me off every month. I'm pretty upset with myself the way that I did it. I did it like a typical consumer. I went and said, how much truck can I afford, basically? And then, just went for it. Had I pre planned this better, I would have just put the money aside, right? Because I could have driven my minivan for a couple of years, put the money aside. I wouldn't be paying interest and I could have just bought it. And that's the thing is we're not really taught to do that because that doesn't help. If we're not paying interest, we're not feeding back into the economy of consumerism, right? That's something that happens to us when we are highly consumeristic. I don't even know if consumeristic is a word. That's just what floated out of my mouth. So if it's not a word, please just roll with it. The debt, the overspending, the pressure to keep up with the trends, even being able to say you've got the newest whatever. People are in debt, and not only just in debt, but spending money that they could be using for the betterment of their actual lives, right? People who are upset because they never get to go on vacation, but they're buying things over and over and over and over again that if they weren't that big of a consumer, they'd be able to go on vacation. And yes, that is consumerism too. But I guess what I'm trying to say is using intention and really taking our time when we are deciding how to spend our money. Our money is energy. It is the energy that we have put out via work and gotten back in as the reward for work. So when we're kind of letting it come in and then it's going out to things that are short term, right? Maybe instant gratification, it's not that fulfilling in the long run. That's why so many people are unhappy, right? There are a lot of people that are unhappy that have a lot of things that they didn't have before: cars, houses, kids, all kinds of things, but they're still not that happy because now they have to keep up with it. Right? I think that's, to be honest, I think that's probably the biggest part of consumerism that people have as a pain point is the idea that, wow, now I have created such a situation for myself on a monthly basis that I cannot slow down. I have to keep going at this pace for 30, 40 years or else. And that's the tragedy to me. I don't want people to do that. To me, that's just tragic because it's overconsumption. It's okay to be a consumer, but that overconsumption, that putting yourself in a position where you are going to have to be a machine, I don't want people to do that. There's a lot behind it, right? So how did we become consumers? How did this happen? Well, advertisers are so smart. They hire psychologists. They do market research. They find our pain points and then use language to make us feel good about buying their product. They use our social media outlets now, right, to make us feel a certain thing. It's a lot of it's a lot of psychological manipulation, actually. If you've watched a couple, I've watched a few documentaries on it. Obviously, we know I'm a documentary nerd, and it's fascinating but true. So you watch them and you go, that is how I feel about that product. And I don't even use it, right? There's a lot of products that I don't use, but I have a feeling about them. What? It's because I've been manipulated psychologically through advertising, through words, through images. It's pretty wild if you really dig into it. And it made me feel puppeted. And y'all know freedom is like my thing. So I don't like to feel puppeted. I don't like to feel like I'm doing things that were not based on what I really wanted. I don't like implants, right? I don't want to have it implanted in my brain that the brand name of blank is better than anything, right? Because there's probably all kinds of different better made products, but I wasn't taught that. I think um, when we think about what we want to do instead, so it's all well and good, Vanessa. Thanks for letting us know that we suck because we buy stuff. That's what I feel like you're probably thinking as you're listening to this right now. And that's not at all what I am saying. But if you feel like you are behind constantly, if you feel like you've created a situation for yourself where you're not free, yes, I am talking to you because I don't want that to be your life. One of the things that we'll have to do in order to break this cycle, how to stop consuming excessively, how to stop consuming in a way that hurts me and instead do it in a way that does actually enhance me. We have to be able to talk about the difference between instant gratification and long-term happiness. We are an instant gratification society right now. Everything is at our fingertips. If we are able to get it right now, we want it right now at whatever cost sometimes, right? People are paying 26% interest on certain things to make sure they can get it now, when if they could delay the gratification and allow themselves to be disciplined, they could have the same exact thing in 12 months without having to pay for 3 years because of the percentage of interest. And I'm just making that up because I don't really know if the 1 to 3 year thing even makes sense. But the idea behind it makes sense, of the delayed gratification, the idea of building up to instead of paying off. In some cases, absolutely, I get it. You're sitting here going, Vanessa, I'm not going to save up $250,000 for a house. Yes, I get that. But there are ways that you could do it very, very intelligently to make it easier on yourself. And that means discipline and delayed gratification. There are a lot of wealth podcasts that I've listened to, and a high percentage of those wealthy people have said that that's what they've done with their wealth building strategy, is that they think about the things that are long term going to hurt them financially, and they try to hack how to make that a shorter term. So that would mean, I've heard a lot of people say that they've saved up even more than a down payment so that they could afford a 15-year mortgage instead of a 30-year mortgage, which dramatically cuts a lot of interest over the course of the loan. Because if you look at the course of the loan interest, it's buying two houses in certain cases, and that's insanity. All that money just going into somebody else's bank, right? So obviously it's not a perfect strategy. It's not a blanket statement strategy, but it's things to think about. I want you to be thinking about this stuff. I want you to be thinking about instant gratification versus long-term happiness, and how delaying gratification can or cannot help you in the moment. It'll help you with your mindful spending. I don't want you to feel like you have to deprive yourself. However, if deprivation means, oh no, I can't spend every cent that is in my bank account every month, then yes, I do want you to deprive yourself, because it means that you are in that rat race. And I don't want anybody in that rat race. I don't like being in that rat race. Sometimes I put myself there because I still have to be like, oh, wait a minute, that I like actually seeing that money in the bank more than having the thing, and even sometimes more than travel, if you can believe that. So we have to practice our patience. We have to practice the idea of long-term satisfaction, what today's choices mean for our future successes, and being able to have some of that self-talk come in. Not the I want it now only being the conversation that we're having the conversation of, I want it now. However, what do I want for my future? Does this really support my future, or does this just support my right now emotional state? Because then we've got a lot more to talk about, right? We don't want our emotional state to just be what we can buy for ourselves. I also think that when we think about what we are doing when we're consumers sometimes and trying to feel good about ourselves, whether it's success or um, kind of keeping up, feeling like we're not lesser than people, think about fulfillment in your life. When people feel fulfilled, they don't want for a lot of things, right? We hear that from everybody who feels happy. They're kind of okay with what they have, and they're not all rich, right? As a matter of fact, we have a lot of really unhappy rich people in this world also, because money doesn't actually buy their happiness. It buys them things, but their happiness, their expectations and their communications with others and their connections with others are not good. And so that's why they don't feel fulfilled. So think about creating deeper connections, your relationships, experiences over things, and community over possessions, spending time with people, spending time in places so that you can feel fulfilled and not feel like you have to do that fulfillment by, shopping. Sustainable practices are helpful, right? Reducing your waste. This is for the environment, right? Supporting your local businesses, though, is a great way, right? To let your consumerism help the people that you actually want it to help, right? I try to do that myself too. If I want to go buy certain things, sometimes I will go look and see if there's a local vendor that can give me something similar so that I can feel like I'm putting the money directly into the pocket of somebody in my community versus into the pocket of some CEOs and then finance operators and, all getting it split. And then some poor person making minimum wage gets barely a bit of it. That doesn't make me feel super great. And yes, again, I do purchase things in places like that, but I try to be mindful. And if we all try to be mindful, we're all helping. So what are some action steps? I've given you some of the emotional stuff, things to think about for yourself, and how you can do that thought process of, am I doing the instant gratification thing? Am I doing the setting myself up for long-term success? I want you to think about, sometimes the one in, one out rule. If I buy something that's a knickknack, then I have to get rid of one, right? Like we do that with kids, like, hey, it's Christmas time. Santa's going to bring you some gifts, but you need to get rid of some, right? We got to make some room. You can, give yourself no buy challenges. You can, just you can unsubscribe from marketing emails. Gosh, right? Because those ones get me sometimes if I'm just sitting with my phone and I'm like, oh, that looks cool. Like, dang it, they got me. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be puppeted. So being mindful about why you're doing things is great. Simplifying your life, clear the clutter, really think about what's important to you and why they're important to you. Think about the things that you've been taught to believe are important versus what you really think are important so that you can hold on to things that hold personal value and not value created by somebody else and instilled in you by somebody else. A lot of people find surprising results when they do this practice where they say, well, I'm holding on to that because so and so would be angry if I got rid of it. I'm like, well, give it to so and so then because if you don't want it, you don't have to have it. And that's a whole emotional trail that we have to go down. And all that is a societal expectation that has been created most likely by somebody who wants us to be a consumer. It runs deep, y'all. I'm giving you scratching the surface here in this podcast. It is deep. And I only know because this is what I love to do. I love to research this stuff and it's wowza. So there's a lot of stuff inside of you and your belief system that was implanted within you. And so sift through it and decide what really is important to you. Do you really want a lot of things? And why do you want a lot of things? What does it make you feel? What have you been taught to believe that you should feel because of it? And just try to be more aware. Act with awareness. Make that be your number one when it comes to the energy that you're expending to receive funds for this consumerism? Do I want my energy exchange to always be in, out, in, out, in, out, where I don't actually get to hold on to anything? If I don't want that, or if I don't want to have it be feel like a rat race, and I feel like I have extra, quote unquote, that I can do with whatever I want, then think about some of these practices I'm talking about. Think about simplifying your life and how you can hack into all of these things that are instilled within us that keep us down, that keep us from thriving, and what you can do in your own life to change that. So I hope that that is helpful. I tried not to be too tangential. I had my little bullet points, but at the end of the day, breaking free from consumerism is about reclaiming your autonomy. That's how I feel. You know, freedom, number one for me. It's about making choices that reflect who you are and what you really need, not what you've been told that you need or what you've been told makes you valid. So I challenge you to take a step back and look. I always tell people the first step is always going to be your mindfulness, your observation of what you're doing and why. Always, because you can't apply the correct tool if you don't know what you're fixing. So think about it. Just let yourself observe as you're spending money while you're doing it. Really, while you're doing it. Don't let that surface level first thing come up. Like, because I deserve it. Because treat yourself. Like, that was also instilled in you. Just so you know. Another consumerism trick. Yes, we can treat ourselves, but man, we can treat ourselves in more ways than going broke. That doesn't feel like a treat in the end at all, does it? So just take a deep breath. This is something that sometimes takes a while to unravel, but I want that for you. I want freedom for everybody. So until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me be your guide today. Love y'all. Thanks for listening. To learn more about what I do and how to work with me, head to thepsychgym.com to check it out. Keep lifting, y'all. It's worth it.